From Aston Martin and Audi to Volkswagen, Viper and Sparrow, we've got an A to S of concept cars and new models from the Geneva Motor Show. We really have had a busy time in Geneva, and the extent and quality of the new car launches and concept cars really does make this year's show into a classic of its kind. That's encouraging stuff for the motor industry, especially in the face of worldwide economic gloom, although it is, if you like, a trifle puzzling, but you have to bear in mind the motor industry does work on enormously long lead times. Franco Sparrow is another of the designers you can always rely on to throw caution out of the window when he reaches for the sketchpad. Just a designer, not a car maker, he and his team are sometimes able to ignore the constraints of cost and practicality and marketing reality and build something that's rather purer. Not that big car makers don't ever do that. Not far away in the Geneva show halls was the rocket-shaped GM Firebird show car of 1958, which doesn't look completely different to this three-wheeler. And there's another similarity as well. Firebird was designed as a turbine-powered vehicle, and this car, a collaboration between Sparrow and OZ Wheels, also has an alternative solution in the power plant department. Only this one has a device called the Autonomous Motor Unit, which in brief is basically an engine, complete with all its mechanical and functional parts, which can be installed inside a wheel rim. Alongside the three-wheeler was a four-wheel sports car and a motorcycle, but the main thrust of the new technology was towards the car prototypes, since the banishment of the engine to the previously unused space in the wheel rim delivers an immediate benefit within the car: more space for more luggage or people. Or, looked at from the other angle, smaller cars. In which, as you can see, functional does not have to equate with boring. The presence of Digit Power in the main hall here in Geneva tells you just what a significant market there is for aftermarket tuning houses. With the increasing use of electronics and the increasing sophistication of engine design, most of the traditional routes to extra power are either closed off completely or have already been used. Rejetting the carburettor, blueprinting, porting and polishing, it's all been done. Especially if you're starting with a car that has any kind of sporting pretensions at all. The manufacturer has, in most cases, beaten you to it. But there are still a few avenues open to people with the inclination and the money. You need the money because most of what you can achieve requires specialist knowledge, specialist facilities and specialist ability. Catalytic converters, for example, are a good thing if you're a tree. If you're a drag racer, though, they're bad news because they absorb horsepower. Even the most modern ones take something out of the power band as well as the exhaust emission, and replacing them with what amounts to a gas-flowed item is hardly something you can do in the shed next Sunday afternoon. And this is where Digit Power and people like them step in, improving the performance of your Scooby or your Evo 6 at a stroke. Adjusting the pop-off level of your pop-off valve is another way of squeezing more boost from your turbo, but this is clearly not something you want to make a wild guess at. Trial and error is an expensive option, so best let someone like Digit Power do it for you. Necessarily equipped with a dyno capable of measuring the output from all four wheels, the Digit Power tune-up can adjust ECU parameters on the fly while the car is running, allowing things like the boost setting and injector size to be optimised almost live. But this is such a complex business that we aren't even going to begin talking about it in any great detail. Another must-see stand in Geneva belonged to Aston Martin, where you're basically pressing your nose up against the shop window, looking at a load of goodies you can't afford and will never have. But you do have to look. The trouble is that the entry-level ante for Aston Martin ownership begins where the cost of owning most other cars leaves off. You need £100,000 for a cooking DB7, and that description doesn't denigrate a car we really like, it just illustrates the point. The new DB7 GT raises the game to just over 100 grand, but adds its own brand of compensation in the shape of 435 horsepower, making it a valid competitor for, say, the Ferrari 575, which costs half as much again. Viewed from that perspective, the Aston starts to look like much better value. In fact, it looks like a bargain. Except, and it really isn't easy to say this, it's really just a glorified Jaguar, and these days that only makes it a pointy Ford. The days of hand-built at Newport Pagnell have passed away, but there is still a proper Aston Martin, as 007 knows only too well. However, it's up the top of Aston's leather-padded range in every sense of the word. It doesn't just look the part, it's the real deal. It can live with the Maranello in most respects, or most respects that most normal people are likely to explore anyway, with 460 horsepower limited top end of course, and the other high number you're not so interested in is closer to £160,000, which also keeps you very firmly up there in Ferrari territory. But if you haven't got the inclination or the cash, Aston Martin has the answer in the highly appealing shape of the new baby V8. This is just what we've all been waiting for. More or less the same size and price as a 911, in other words, less than £70,000, though that's still only an estimate, and due out on the roads in a couple of years, which, as far as we can tell, is at least 2 years too long to wait. It's based on a bonded alloy platform, and though it has a nice long end-to-end wheelbase, it's strictly a two-seater with access to the rear luggage space through the hatchback. Power comes from a redeveloped version of the Jaguar V8 with a good amount of new components, including, apparently, the heads and block. And it now delivers more than 320 horsepower. And it's going to need every single one of them if it's to live up to its stated objective of taking on the Carrera 2. On the other hand, it is alleged to weigh less than 1,500 kilos, which is pretty much on a par with Carrera 2 on that score. So in the end, it will be down to the suspension engineers to come up with the answers that will allow it to stay on terms with the most formidable point-to-point sports car money can buy. And we're talking Porsche, of course. So the baby Aston may not be the complete 911 basher when it arrives, brand new out of the box, because it is taking on the best engineered sports car in the world. But it looks just like a baby Vanquish, and it has all the on-the-road presence which that implies. Furthermore, it brings Aston Martin ownership within reach of many, many more people than ever before, and it does it without devaluing the brand, and that's quite an achievement by itself. Audi chose Geneva as the moment to show us the new look A3 in the metal, and though it has been greeted with near rapture by most motoring journalists, and though it is beyond question an extremely attractive and well-made hatchback, it's still only an over-the-top Golf, and sadly, the most over-the-top thing about it is the price. At the moment, A3 pricing starts where regular Golf pricing ends, and that's unlikely to change when the new model becomes available. The new A3 will be the last new Audi to be released before the family gets a new face, allegedly to be based on the heavy front-end looks of the Nuvolari show car, which was also on the Geneva stand. Looking more or less like a TT on steroids, Nuvolari sent the motoring press into a post-Geneva frenzy of delight, which for some reason passed us by. The TT, cute as it might have been as a concept car, remains a strangely shaped blob, And not even a latecomer V6 engine and paddle shift gears can change that, nor make up for the wasted space behind the front seats. Upholstered for people, but hardly large enough for luggage. So here is a gently inflated TT, admittedly with the slightly snappier look to lights and grille and whatever, which are destined to be that new Audi face, but crucially with enough room inside for it to be a genuinely crabbed 2+2. You can't fit your kids in the TT, but you can squash them in here. We've got Vipers and Volkswagens next as we leave the concepts behind us and move firmly into the field of real steel. The new VW is called Touran and you will like it. The new Viper is called Viper, and if you ever see it in black, it's love at first sight. When Chrysler wanted to update the fastest lorry in the world, they held a series of clinics and asked existing Viper owners what they liked and wanted to keep, and what they didn't like and wanted to change. Those opinions were listened to and are incorporated into the latest version of the monstrous two-seater, and we say monstrous deliberately because what we're talking about is just size. Pump up a Mazda MX-3 to double size and it still won't make you gulp in surprise the way a Viper does. And if size and appearance don't do the trick, then the engine certainly will. All 8 and a bit litres of it. 4 Astras, Vectras or whatever. More than double the size of a 911 engine. Twice the capacity of a DB7. And the fact that it only delivers 500 horsepower, which is 50 more than it used to, that still tells you loud and clear that it's not what you'd call highly stressed. What we're talking about here is one great big lazy mother of an engine that still fires you out of the traps with enough grunt to take your breath away. If you can master the heavyweight clutch and the 6-speed gearbox with enough precision to stop it setting fire to the rear wheels, that is, though the clutch has been lightened. Not that anyone's trying to do that in these pictures. On the narrow lanes chosen for the press launch, the thing just fills the road up, and the ride still manages to look a little bit choppy despite the improved rigidity of the frame and the heavily reworked suspension. Lots of aluminium bits and pieces, new geometry, plus lightweight new coilovers and lightweight stabiliser bars front and rear. The brakes too have been extensively revised. Extra cooling for the 14-inch discs and 4-pot calipers is one thing, and the enthusiastic drivers will appreciate that once they get going. And the ABS electronics have had a little bit of a talking to as well. With brakes that size, you just know the wheels are enormous. 18 inches at the front, 19 at the rear, and the tyres too. Hook a white line with one of these, and you will be leaving the motorway at the next exit, even if you weren't planning to. And if even they aren't big enough, StarTech can help. Located in Geneva on the same stand as German tuning firm Brabus, StarTech is also located in Germany in the same street as Brabus. But where Brabus offers styling and tuning parts for Mercedes cars, the owners of Daimler Chrysler, if you like, StarTech offers styling parts for Daimler Chrysler cars, which are the same people. Okay, you've got the picture. StarTech equals Brabus, Brabus equals StarTech. And this is the Brabus Viper by any other name. And though they haven't got around to reworking that massive and massively lazy engine, you know they will. Meanwhile, you can modify the already sharpened new-look Viper with loads of StarTech add-ons, including 20-inch wheels, wearing tyres specially developed for the StarTech Viper by Pirelli, and let's face it, they'd have to be. But the best bit has to be the paint. Just how good does it look in black? Volkswagen used the Geneva show as the launch platform for 2 new vehicles. one of which will almost certainly have another world premiere elsewhere and at a commercial vehicle show too. The latest version of the Caravelle or multivan is of course the transporter van by any other name, but the mundane workhorse has flexibility built in when you start thinking crew bus. With adaptable partitioned-off sections, it has room for some comfy seating that's more than adequate for 5 man-sized passengers, and there's still a large load area out back, very large in fact, big enough for lots of luggage or kit. It's a bit squarish to look at from the outside, but it does make an eminently sensible family camper or whatever. Or if you have grander plans, you can make the passenger compartment a bit more roomy, throw in some posh leather trim and a table and call it the business model, and still have room for the long-haul luggage of 4 average executive-type travellers. It's more than reasonably priced, even against the regular Sharon-type MPVs, and of course it comes with all the reassurance of Volkswagen engineering and build quality. It's an easy thing to drive, even though it looks a bit big at first, with excellent visibility, a very calm ride, and even better comfort for driver and passengers. If it wants anything at all in this department, it would be a much shorter shift lever, one that grows out of the dashboard, say, because the pudding stirrer it's got now does stand out a bit against the excellence of just about everything else. Which naturally includes the engines, which are little short of perfect. Fully loaded, and we do mean fully loaded, it will cruise up and down the Autobahn all day long at 100 miles an hour, and the diesel is not just economical but also quiet and smoothly torquey. This thing pulls like a car when it's loaded like a lorry, and you really couldn't ask for more in that department. But if, on the other hand, it's rather less that you're after, and that's less as in smaller even than the Sharon Galaxy duo, Volkswagen now has the answer in the rather prosaic shape of the new Touran, which is essentially a Golf-based mini MPV to rival the runaway success of Scenic. Though it may not look exactly radical, the Touran is the first evidence of the all-new floor pan, which will be the basis of the new Golf when it appears later on this year. The suspension at the back in particular is something which Volkswagen is pretty pleased about, but of course it's not fair to judge it against Golf-type rivals while it's wearing an MPV-type body. But first impressions indicate a nice firm ride, with body roll well controlled, making it a very different proposition to the softer Scenic, though perhaps not to the other new rival in the segment, the long-awaited Focus C-Max, which comes with all the legendary chassis dynamics of the hatchback, against which Touran and the upcoming Golf will eventually have to be judged. There may not be anything especially outstanding about the Touran styling, but that may well be the best option given the brave choice made by Renault with the new notchback Scenic. The smooth but modern Focus shape remains the most pleasing to the most eyes, we think, though it's quite clear that looks aren't everything when it comes to choosing a family car that has to be truly practical. You've only got to look at the truly bland appearance of Zafira to see that cleverness really does sell. And in any case, Volkswagen may not have wanted to give away too much about the looks of the upcoming Golf at this exact moment. Replacing a car that sold more units than the legendary Beetle is a task that has to be undertaken with considerable trepidation and probably in great secrecy. So what we've got here is the same as we had with the last Golf, a clean, neat shape that's about as inoffensive as it can be. You may not fall instantly in love, but there's nothing here to turn you away, so you can decide whether or not you like the car on its own merits, which are of course considerable. Especially here, and especially if you choose either of the immediately available diesels, which will be joined by a 1600 petrol from launch and by more engines from the Golf range once manufacturing gets properly going. And its merits are also well evidenced from inside, where a typically thorough VW interior and dashboard are the high spot of the journey. This is an area where the Touran is easily up there with the best on the market, as you would expect from a Volkswagen, of course. And it's a quality which extends throughout the cabin. Well designed and well built, you know it can stand up to family life with little or no difficulty. The only drawback may be the seating arrangement. Flexible and clever, yes, but here too it's typically Volkswagen in that the roomy 7-seat layout comes as an extra. 5 seats standard, 7 seats, 500 quid. A small price to pay, you might think, especially when viewed against the list price of £15,000 and more. But then Zafira comes with 7 seats as standard and its list price is lower across what bits of the range there are to compare. But that's standard VW pricing policy, if you like. A Golf costs more than an Astra and a Passat more than a Mondeo, and the market is used to it, so there's no reason why it should hinder sales of what is beyond doubt as good a solution to the friends, family, garden rubbish new settee problem as anyone else has got so far. And there will be plenty of extra ways to spend your cash anyway, with 3 trim levels available from launch. Exact details have yet to be announced, but the Touran will come in S, SE and Sport variants, all with 6 airbags, ABS braking, emergency brake assist and electronic stability control. And all of them will have a 6-speed manual gearbox with the option of a 6-speed automatic and the new paddle shift gearbox, which has just made its appearance on the newest versions of the Audi TT, although quite why remains a mystery. The ride might be firm, but it's not that firm. Still, at least that's one thing we can be pretty sure will come up as an option with GTI and VR6 versions of the upcoming Golf. Bets, anybody?